What does it mean to grow up? To leave innocence behind, to face heartbreak, failure, and truth, and emerge transformed? Literature has a name for this timeless journey: the Bildungsroman, a story of becoming, a novel of formation, a mirror of our own struggles to find identity, purpose, and belonging. Hi everyone, welcome back to Literature with Jaisal. Today we are diving into one of the most fascinating genres of literature, the Bildungsroman. The word Bildungsroman comes from German, Bildung meaning education or formation, and Roman meaning novel. Put simply, it's a novel of growth and self discovery. You might know it as a coming of age story, but it's more than just about growing older. It's about transformation, from childhood to maturity, from innocence to experience, and from the self to society. The genre began in 18th century Germany with Goethe's Wilhelm Meister's apprenticeship. This novel became the blueprint. A restless young man leaves home, stumbles through failures and discoveries, and eventually finds meaning in art and society. From there, the tradition spread across Europe and into the works of Dickens, Bronte, and Eliot, before becoming a truly global form. Because growth, struggle, and self discovery are universal human experiences. So, what makes a Bildungsroman distinct? First, most Bildungsroman focus on a single protagonist. Usually, it's one main character who begins as young, naive, or inexperienced, and we follow their personal journey. Second, there's a journey of growth. The protagonist matures psychologically, morally, and spiritually. But this growth does not come easy. It often happens through mistakes, struggles, and setbacks. Third, we see a conflict between the individual and society. The character wrestles with family pressures, social rules, or cultural norms, all of which push them to figure out who they are. And that leads to the fourth feature, the search for identity. At the heart of the Bildungsroman lies the question, who am I? This search might involve education, love, career, or moral choices. Fifth, the role of mentors and influences is crucial. Friends, teachers, guides, or even enemies, each one shapes the protagonist's development, for better or worse. Sixth point I'll discuss later. Next is the ending. Some Bildungsromans close with resolution and balance, like Jane Eyre. Others leave the story open ended, showing that growth is ongoing, like The Catcher in the Rye. Let's come back to the sixth point now. So, the story often unfolds in stages of development: childhood innocence, a crisis or conflict, the struggle for independence, and finally, maturity and self awareness. Take Charles Dickens's David Copperfield for an example. There's an abused child who escapes hardship, learns through work and love, and finally finds purpose as a writer. This pattern repeats with variation across centuries and cultures. Let us now look at some classic examples. Like we already discussed, the first true Bildungsroman was Goethe's Wilhelm Meister's Apprenticeship. Then we see Charlotte Bronte's Jane Eyre, the orphan girl who grows into a woman of independence and self respect. James Joyce's A Portrait of the Artist as a Young Man shows Stephen Dedalus breaking away from tradition to discover his artistic voice. And J.D. Salinger's The Catcher in the Rye gives us Holden Caulfield navigating alienation and identity in post war America. Each of these novels is different, but they all circle back to the same question: how do we grow up and find ourselves? Variations of the Bildungsroman. Now, while the traditional Bildungsroman focused on a young man's growth into adulthood, modern literature has expanded the form. The female Bildungsroman, like Jane Eyre or The Color Purple, emphasizes women's journeys toward freedom and independence. The post colonial Bildungsroman, like Achibi's Things Fall Apart, explores both personal and national identity. The queer Bildungsroman, like Alison Bechdel's Fun Home, centers on LGBTQ self discovery. The Künstlerroman follows the protagonist's transformation into an artist, like Stephen Dedalus in Joyce's work. Think Netflix has nothing to do with classic literature? Think again. Modern series adapt the classic Bildungsroman structure to reflect today's Gen Z struggles with love, trauma, and identity. Take Wednesday, for example. At first, Wednesday Adams resists all human connection at the Nevermore Academy, but gradually she learns trust, friendship, and responsibility. Classic themes of identity, independence, and maturity. In sex education, Otis Milburn begins as an awkward teen. Through relationships and mistakes, he grows into a more confident, self aware person. Meanwhile, characters like Maeve, Eric, and Ames explore friendship, sexuality, and social expectations, all hallmarks of the genre. In Never Have I Ever, Devi Vishwakumar grapples with grief, cultural identity, academic pressure, and romance. Her messy but meaningful journey shows how growth comes through failure, reconciliation, and balance. 13 Reasons Why takes the Bildungsroman into darker territory, where Clay Jensen and others face trauma, guilt, and questions of morality, reminding us that growing up often means confronting painful truths. And finally, Stranger Things, a sci fi adventure that still carries the DNA of the Bildungsroman. Eleven's transformation from sheltered child to independent young woman mirrors the timeless story of identity, sacrifice, and maturity. Whether in classic novels like David Copperfield and Jane Eyre or modern Netflix shows, the Bildungsroman remains relevant because it reflects our most human struggle, the search for identity, belonging, and purpose. Becoming an adult is never simple, but it is always meaningful. And that's why the Bildungsroman endures, because it tells the most universal story of all, the story of becoming oneself.